Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ron and Don here. Rob and Don here. We're talking about RSA Conference that we attended last week, the 2019. Just give you a recap of what we learned and the benefits for you. If next year you're planning on attending in 2020, you may want to get some advice from us on what to see, what you can do, how to go about attending the conference. What is it all about? So wanted to cover in this session primarily just talk about conference logistics, like what do you need to know before you get there, how do you get around, what about food, that kind of stuff. Especially for new folks that are attending this, I think that that's a very helpful thing to know what to expect when you get there, because I think this conference, and you could speak up, Rob, if you feel this way too, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And I know we use that cliche a lot, but it really is like drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much going on that it's overwhelming, and trying to figure out and maximizing the best use of your time is what we hope to help you out with. We'll talk about the expo floor. Almost all the top security vendors are there, so what did you get out of that? We'll talk about some of the sessions, learning labs, keynotes, and some of the stuff after hours. Because after you've been learning all day, you have to take a break and spend some downtime. First thing is, if you're a new person or you plan to attend in the future, there is a tip page after you've registered for it. There's a tip page that will kind of walk you through different types of things, like reserving a seat on different sessions and other stuff like that. It also breaks down where the conference is, where the expo halls are, how to get around, gives you the bus schedule. So there's a lot of really good stuff to watch this if you've never gone before to the RSA conference, because it's a huge one. It's like one of the biggest cybersecurity conferences in the world. And so there's a lot of people there, a lot of things to go and see and do, and a lot of stuff, if you haven't been there, you sort of have to just muddle your way through. Now, the first conference I went to was years ago, and I don't think they had anything like this, and when it was much smaller too. And I'd have to say that I didn't really have a good grasp of what was going on. My first year, I don't think I got the best out of it that I could have, because I just didn't know what was going on. I ended up spending almost all my time trying to hit sessions and running it back from building to building, that I kind of missed out on some other things that I probably would have wanted to see better. And I think that, what about you, Rob? Your first time was what, last year? Was that your first time?
Yep, last year. And even then, last year, it was a little bit smaller, in my opinion, than it was this year. So, and even then, it was, like you said, the proverbial fire hose. I don't think that's the right analogy. I think it's trying to drink a cup of water, trying to fill it from Niagara Falls, I think would be a better statement. just because there's so many different topics, like categories of topics within the umbrella of cybersecurity.
True.
That was number one. Number two. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're on the list. Go.
So number two is the just sheer distance that you have to travel in a day to get to where you want to go, because not all of your sessions from each of the categories of tracks are all in the same building, for example. Like this year, there was 4 buildings, right? So they had the Moscone West, the North, the South, and they had stuff over at the Marriott Marquis. I think on average for the 5 days, I walked close to 8 miles.
Per day, right?
And that was, each day was 8 miles, and that was just going to and from sessions and going out and finding lunch.
Yes. I think that that's one of the things that I think that you kind of underestimate. It's a little bit better than it was last year because Moscone last year was going through the process of retrofitting the building and adding some more stuff on. This year it was a lot more clean. There was a walkway above that you can walk over the traffic. And then the front doors to the thing, last year there was wood all up and you had to walk through like a little gangplank to get up there. So now it's all done, all the construction is done, and so now you can get around a little bit easier, but still, like you said, a lot of walking just because everything's so far away.
Yep. Well, and it's like 3 floors plus the expo floor, which is in, I call it like the basement area, but I mean, that's still a huge amount of space and crowded. Even though it's that many buildings, there's 55,000 people in that area, and they're all heading to and from basically the same rooms that you want to go to.
Well, yeah, and then also that's just a busy part of the city in general. So there's a lot of people that aren't even attending the conference because you have to walk out. And this is one of the things that I think is different than other conferences. So if you've gone to another conference like Microsoft Ignite that used to be called TechEd, everything is in the conference center. And once you enter the conference center, you don't leave the conference center. Moscone is different. Once you enter it, in order to get to another session, you may have to walk across the street to go to another building to get to a session, and then leave that building to go to another building to get to another session. So there's a lot of walking around where so just know this, if you're at the conference, you're going to have to walk. And I want to say that we went from south to west, and the amount of time that they had between the sessions was just about the right amount of time. By the time we got to the next one, they were already seating people in for that session. So you just got to know that you're going to be walking a little bit. And like you said, 8 miles was what your average was. I think travel is kind of something you have to kind of plan in advance. I live in the Bay Area, so for me, I ended up staying in the city, getting a hotel there, because I think that if you are traveling in from out of town, even though you live in the Bay Area, it would take me normally 2.5 hours, an hour to get to the BART station, an hour to get into the city, and then half an hour just to get on site. What we did different this year is we went in on Sunday to get our badges and check in on Sunday, which was really, I thought, a good idea because you were in town early. So we drove into the city. We picked you up, went to the conference hall, got our badges, got our swag that we got. What did we get, a T-shirt in a bag or something like that? And then, the conference book. Yep. And a water bottle. And a water bottle. Nice thing was we could then drop that off and we didn't have to carry that around with us all day. One thing that I always do every time that I've gone to a conference, whether it's this one or another one, is I don't carry around the same bag that everybody else does, because if you set it down, then everybody else's looks the same. I like to know that mine's different, because you put it underneath your seat when you're sitting in it and someone grabs it because they don't know that, it's not theirs because it looks the same. And if you do use their backpack, tie something on it. And by the way, this year's backpack was way better than last year's. It looks like it's a little bit more rugged, and it may last a little bit longer. And trust me, I go to conferences all the time, and sometimes the bags they give out are cheap. Hotel was an issue. Finding a hotel and just the cost of staying in the city is really exorbitant. One of the speakers said that he didn't get his hotel until last minute, so he ended up having to go all the way out to Daly City to get a hotel, and then BART in every day to attend sessions, and then for his speaking for whatever day it was. We were lucky. We got a hotel, just a block up from you on Sutter Street. So that was not too bad. There was a bus line that went, it's a conference bus, not a bus line. The conference has buses that they send out for different areas, and you just need to know where your hotel is and then look it up on the chart. And it was a little confusing, I have to admit. when we were reading it, but we figured it out, and it was 1 block away from your hotel and 2 or 3 from mine, where we could pick up on the bus and then go around. So getting around is, if between the buildings, you're going to have to walk. There's just a way you're going to have to do it. Getting around from your hotel to the conference center or back, you would take a bus. Other than that, if you're getting around, you would probably need to do a taxi or a Uber or Lyft. We did Uber a lot, and we got around actually relatively easily. We didn't wait very long for Ubers, even when we were being picked up at the conference center. There always seemed to be plenty of them going, so that was good. So getting around was not difficult. Getting in and out of the city, we used BART. You used BART to get there from the airport, but
yep.
The bad thing was on Saturday on your flight home, BART was shut down or something. There was an emergency or something.
Yeah. So what happened to BART? Apparently they were doing maintenance on a UPS for the power lines that feed the trains, and for whatever reason it never came back online, so none of the lines had power, which also meant you couldn't buy any, like you couldn't recharge your Clipper card or buy any tickets. And then when they did get partial service back up, it was only going from San Francisco, like downtown, out to either the third to last or second to last stop before Daly City, and then there was like 3 more stops to get to the airport. So that didn't come back online until it was like noon or something like that. Well past the time I would have been able to get out there, but apparently the report said it was a 1 in 15-year issue.
Well, it was computer related somehow. I know that they were doing some other stuff. So there's a backup power, and there was some kind of computer thing related to it. I'd have to read it. But anyways, anytime you go to any conference anywhere, always make sure you have backup travel plans.
Yeah, I mean, and Uber was pretty cheap. It only cost me like $25 on an Uber to get to the airport from downtown. So
no, that's not bad at all. I want to say a taxi cab last time I did it was $50 from downtown to the airport, or 45, something like that. It's been a while.
Yep.
I haven't had to do that for a while. One thing to know about if you're going to go to RSA every year, my first year I didn't know this, and then I got there and I'm like, where's food? And they have breakfasts in the morning at the 8 o'clock session. There's a breakfast, and if you eat low carb or vegan, there's nothing there for you. It's like breakfast sandwiches on croissants, donuts, that
bagels.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And bagels. Yeah. And then they have the obligatory coffee, decaf, tea, hot drinks. I think they had yogurt too. So you're going to have to plan eating when you're there. During the day at lunchtime, they actually have sessions going even during that time. So if you want to fast for a day, that's great. You can just keep on going through. There's stuff to do. I mean, you go down to the expo hall and hang out there. There is food, like the reception night, there was food. And a couple of vendors on the expo floor had things like popcorn or other snack type foods. So just so you know that you can still find something to eat if you wanted to find something, but it's not always around. And it's the expo hall thing. I think when they get their when a vendor wants to get an expo hall, they may pick a package, and one of the packages, your booth can host this drink, because they had drinks one day, or it can host some kind of food. And the idea is that the food's sparse, so people will go to your booth to get their food, and then you can then scan their badge so they can send you 1,000 emails getting you to try to buy their stuff. So other than that, you're going to have to find food around there. Moscone Center has a bunch of restaurants. We ate at, what was the place we ate the first day? That was
Buckburger or something?
No, the Buckhorn, the Buckhorn Grill. So they had, that's in there, but we got there just before noon, and there was already a line, and and finding a place to sit and eat, and it was raining that day. So you can't really sit outside in the park because there's a little park there that you could sit out there. And usually if it's sunny, I would go out there and just eat out there because there's hardly ever any seating inside. There's not enough seating in there. It certainly isn't going to take all the conference people. So a lot of conference people end up having to travel a little bit to find a restaurant. And the problem you run in with that is that if you have a scheduled session at 1 o'clock, there is no way you're going to go to another restaurant, sit down, eat, and then come back. So it's either going to be fast food and it's going to be near. They had a couple of like taco trucks, but the little not necessarily mobile diners, whatever you want to call them, food trucks. But they only had 3.
Yeah, they had 3.
And I think they had more last year, and they parked them in a different location. And I really was disappointed in that. I think they could have had 10 all the way around the block, and every one of them would have made a killing because there's just not enough time. I saw people. We were walking back from lunch, and people were just then getting lunch at 1 o'clock. So that's one of the problems that's always been with this particular conference. You just need to know that before you get there. Maybe bring your own food. I don't know what the deal is with Moscone Center or why RSA has always done it this way. I want to say I went to a Microsoft event years ago, like Windows XP timeframe, and they actually had boxed lunches there. So I don't know if that's a Moscone thing or RSA thing or what it is. There's a couple Chipotles there's 2 within walking distance from there. We went to an Irish pub called the Chieftain. We went there. They opened at 11:30. We were there at 11:30. We were able to get seats right away, and a lot of people from the conference ended up there. So then they got really busy while we were there. So there's places to go if you can kind of try and beat the crowd. Go ahead and do that. But there's not really a lot of help. You're going to have to probably use your phone to find food in the area because the conference doesn't give you a list. I've gone to other conferences where they give you a list. Here's all the food around here that you can go and eat for lunch. They didn't do anything like that. So you'll have to plan that out. One thing they have is a mobile app. Last year they had a problem with it. There was a memory leak or something in the mobile app. But this year, apparently that was taken care of. Mine was a little glitchy. I had to keep on logging in every day, and other people didn't have to. I don't know what the deal was with that. Mobile app will tell you where the sessions are, what your next session is. You're able to do your feedback after a session, and that puts you into a drawing, which I don't know anyone's ever won that thing, but I'm sure somebody has. But you got 20,000 people at a conference, you're not going to know who the winner is. They do have the ability to reserve a seat, and I hesitate to tell you the people out there in the rest of the world to reserve a seat because that may make it difficult for me to get a seat in the future. But up to 1 hour before a session, you were able to go in and reserve a seat for a session. So that's a good idea. If you plan on taking the session, you reserve a seat, they let you in first, and then everybody standby goes after that. And if they run out of room, then standby people can't go in. So I don't think we were in a lot of sessions that we went to that were full.
Yes.
So are very close to being full. So it's a good idea to do that if you can. So Expo Hall. So the Expo floor is huge compared to what it was last year. The whole underneath of Moscone Center has been redeveloped, and now between North and South halls, if you've ever been there before, there's now a whole huge hall between the two that was now full of vendors. So it seems like there was more vendors there. There was a lot more booths, but like Cisco had 3 booths, and I don't know if Cisco in the past has always had 3 booths or if they've only had 1 booth. Or maybe it's because there was more space, they had more. I did notice that there were some vendors that were not there that have been there in the past, like Qualys. Used to be a big, huge vendor at RSA, and they weren't there this year. So not sure what the deal was with that. So the size of it has really grown, and I tell you, we probably walked down every aisle and looked at every vendor, but did not have time to stop and talk to every vendor. I kind of get the feeling that if you really wanted to hear everybody's, spiel, their 5 minute, now everybody wants you to talk to you for more than 5 minutes. So you just have to kind of be a little bit, forceful about, hey, I got to go on to the next one or whatever it is. Otherwise, you're never going to get through anything. And sometimes I even tell people, okay, you got 30 seconds, dazzle me, and one guy's like, well, hey, let me tell you about our product, what we do. One thing that I've noticed, though, is some of the people here, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Rob, some of them are salespeople and they're really good about interacting with people, and some of them are like the technical people and they're not really good at attending to people. I walked to a booth, I was standing in front of it, waiting to get some information about it. Some guy standing there looking at me, didn't even interact with me, and I was really kind of like, you must be like the technical guy, right? And where's your handler? The person that has the outgoing personality is going to say, hey, is there anything I can answer a question for you or anything like that? It just wasn't happening for some of them.
I agree. There's a big chunk that I think the larger booth had the salespeople matched with the tech people. So the salespeople would give you the spiel, they'd come out and talk to you and all that kind of stuff, and then try to find out exactly what your interests were, and then direct you to the right technical person so that they could find a solution to that particular problem.
Right.
Smaller booths, however, like you said, you may even be looking at the entirety of their company sitting there, right? And there may be 3 people.
Yeah, it could be. So no, I mean, I thought that was really good, that the vendors do have the technical people there to answer the questions. The problem is they're not very outgoing. And so sometimes you have to interact with them before they'll interact with you. I think one of them that I thought was the most interesting one, and this guy is like, he works for different vendors and he's always been there at different times, is the magician guy. You remember the magician guy?
Oh, yeah.
So I've seen him at Microsoft Ignite. I've seen him at other conferences working for different vendors, not always with the same place. And he does like a little magic show and he gets you kind of interested, and then he tells you, hey, you're all going to win a prize. But then he gets us all to sit down to watch a demo before anybody figures out what their prize is. And the problem with that is I was semi-interested in the magic because I was kind of like watching, because I saw this show on TV where it says it's all about misdirection. So don't watch his hands because he's going to move things out of your line of sight, and that's when the trick happens. And so I was really watching carefully, trying to figure out, okay, where's the trick, right? And he did a really good job with one guy. The rest of us could see what was going on because he was throwing the ball, and they just pulled another one out of his pocket, right? So it made it look like, the magic was it was going back into his pocket, but it wasn't. But then he had us go over there, sit down to hear a speech. He said it was only going to be 2 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'll listen to your spiel for 2 minutes. But then the guy just talked on and talked on and talked on, and then I felt like it was like 20 minutes. It wasn't that long. It's probably only 10, but I was like, okay, this is bait and switch. I know that they always want to do presentations and stuff like that, but I have a hard time with it because there's just not enough time for me to sit down and do a presentation. And I mean, you scanned my badge. You're going to send me 1,000 emails. I came there to kind of just figure out, what your booth is. I want the high-level overview. And then if I want to ask questions about, like, how does this particular program work, then you show it to me. But they do that, then they bait you with swag. And I think what the best question is, what do you think was the best swag this year?
Well, there were a couple things. There's the Mickeys they were giving out. A couple of booths had those. The whiskey ball was a good one. I don't know. Some of them were like, T-shirts and stuff like that. Last year, RSA was giving out Yeti cups, and there was a vendor who was giving out lockpick sets. Those were cool last year.
Yes. I didn't.
This year, well, there's a difference between swag and prizes, right? So the stuff that they give you at the booth to take back, whatever, varied selection, T-shirts. I didn't see very many hats, but T-shirts, stickers, pens, bags, those kind of things. I think that, like I said, probably the better ones were the whiskey ball. So that's a thing you fill up with water, and you can put like a slice of lime or something in it and freeze it, and then put that in a whiskey glass and drink, have that as your ice cube, which is kind of cool. And the Mickeys.
Right. You know what? I think we got one of the vendors had shot glasses, and one of the other ones. What was the other one? Oh, the whiskey balls, and then flasks. So Christine got a flask from Lockout, the mobile phone software, and then I got a flask from Bitdefender, and hers is way better. It's bigger, and it's got like the leather on the outside, and the one that I got was just like a stainless steel one with their name, burnt onto it or whatever. So I thought those were good. And actually, you're right about prizes being different. And, of course, everybody wants to be entered into the prizes. I think there were some GoPros that were prizes, some drones I saw as prizes. A lot of places were giving away some of their services at their booths. That was probably more of a swag thing. Like Lockout was actually giving like a year of their premium service for the personal side. So that was kind of a cool giveaway, I think. As far as prizes, I saw at least 5 or 6 different places doing Legos. Somebody had the Legos Saturn rocket, and then somebody had the Millennium Falcon, the big one. Another one had another Star Wars set. I forget which set that was.
Death Star.
The Death Star. And then there was one that was a race car. So they kind of know the crowd of people that are going to be there. So a lot of nerdy people like the Star Wars stuff. So they had a lot of really good prizes for that kind of thing.
Well, there was a couple that were still doing the VR sets too.
So yes, the VR sets. So you should always kind of, if you come to this conference or you go to any other conference, you have to figure out that you're going to be taking back home more than you got, or you're just going to have to not take everything home. So there was a bunch of stuffed animals. One guy had a, what was it? Their whole theme, I forgot what booth it was. Their whole theme was like, what's the name of that TV
There's
show?
owls.
I can't believe it. There was owls, yes. What's that TV show? The dragon one, yeah. Whatever. My God,
Game of Thrones.
That's it. Thank you. Game of Thrones. So Game of Thrones, they had a dragon, they had like a kilt pin, and they had a bunch of other stuff that was related to that if you like Game of Thrones, then you would have really liked it. So they had that kind of stuff. That was all good stuff. I have to say my favorite thing, though, was this little sticker. And I thought it was great because I do a presentation on IoT and how something small can, and actually the description of the session that I do talks about the thermal port that's on the Death Star, and that little tiny thing could destroy the whole entire Death Star, and how a little tiny IoT could be doing destroy your whole network. So when I saw this sticker, I was like, oh my God, I got to get it. And I think Salt, is that the name of the company or whatever? They had that, and they had a couple other stickers. They had one with Darth Vader says, I find your lack of salt disturbing or something. But this was, and it's just a sticker. I know it's kind of lame. But I really liked it. Last year's was the Yeti Cup, and you're absolutely right. I felt like that was like the best one. And my wife stole that from me. But it's a really good mug. And
you fairly gave that away.
Well, I know. So joining us is Christine. She also attended. At the end, maybe you can give us a little bit of your advice, or maybe even at this point in time. As a new person going to the RSA conference, what are your, just about the conference, the logistics of it, what are your main takeaways?
It's overwhelming. So you have to kind of take it in stride. I would suggest partnering up with veterans. And I've been to a lot of conferences before. Of course, not as large, because if I understand correctly, it's probably one of the largest in North America. But it's worth it. You get a lot of good information out of it, especially for either those starting out in the industry, or if you're just getting information part of kind of, in your career path. It's really, really good. And everybody gets information through media about breaches and hacks and all that kind of stuff. This gives you a better understanding of the magnitude of them and how often they happen, and the type of devices that are compromised because of it. And it's overwhelming. My interest in going had a lot of more human elements to it versus the more technical ones. So I tended to focus on those a little bit more, and I thought they were all very, very interesting. And I will say my big takeaway from it is that being in the healthcare field, there is some great opportunity at this particular conference for the healthcare industry, and I don't think healthcare organizations understand that. So I'm kind of putting it out there. Healthcare, go to the conference, participate in it, get a booth in it, recruit there, whatever the case is, it's definitely worth it. It's one of the things I'm bringing back to my organization.
Yeah, I remember one of the vendors on the floor was a hospital organization, or HMO or PPO or whatever they are. And they were there simply to ask questions. They had a survey that they were asking people to fill out about how well you felt like the hospitals and the insurance providers are protecting your data, what's important to you for that. So they were using it, one, as like, hey, we think security is important. That was why they were there. But they were also asking for feedback. And I thought that was really interesting. And there was actually two other ones that I thought were interesting on the expo floor too, were the state of Virginia and the state of Georgia looking for people to move their businesses there. So you get all kinds of things. I mean, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, NSA were all there recruiting / telling what they do. NSA had an Enigma machine. They have that every year, I think, because people like to see those things. And ISC Squared, ISACA, ISSA, other organizations that security professionals join or become part of, were all there represented with booths. So there was plenty of things to see there. During the sessions, my takeaway with the sessions was it was hit or miss. And one thing to consider if you are at the conference, some of the sessions are recorded and you can watch them later. So, because I don't know if, I know that Rob, you had said something about that. I think you did as well, Christine. There was like 3 sessions you wanted to attend, all set at the same time, which makes it really difficult to figure out which one you want to go to. Well, you don't have to worry about it. You can go back and watch them later. In fact, I was watching one this morning. I think it's one of the ones that Christine told me about. Humans are awesome at risk management. So I went in this morning, and it was already up, posted, so I was watching it to kind of see what the session was all about. And actually, that was a really good session. But so they're available for you, so don't freak out if you miss one, or if because lunch ran long because you couldn't get in food or whatever it is. Just know that they're recording the sessions. You can go in and find them. My takeaway on the sessions, I think I probably did more of the malware. On the first day, Rob and I both did what was it called? I forgot the name of the track, because emerging threats. A lot of what they were talking about, their big thing was IoT, crypto jacking. I think that was ransomware still a problem. I mean, that was kind of the takeaways for Monday. And they did talk about specifics that I thought was really interesting. I think the best presentation for me was the one about hacking multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
I thought the guy that did it was from KnowBe4, and he showed how you could go through the process of hacking it. And he actually did live demos or recorded ones or whatever he did. One thing that interested me is that it's a proof of concept, proof that it can be done. However, like he said, don't run for the hills and just throw out multi-factor authentication. Because of it, realizing that the level of effort that's necessary for hackers to actually accomplish this and the level of knowledge they have to have about you, it's going to take a coordinated effort for them to get to it. And if the reward's not big, they're not going to go for it. Now, if you're a big target, CEO of a big company, then they may go through all those efforts to get to you. So the average person probably doesn't have to worry about it. Average person should probably have multi-factor authentication set up. But CEOs and other places like that, they're going to probably have to do something a little bit extra, especially if they're a target. Rob, Christine, what were your best presentations, you think?
I have to say the hacking multi-factor was probably the best one.
How about you, Christine? What do you think was the best?
Well, I attended a session on autism and cybercrime. And again, that was part of the human element track. I found it very interesting. Just knowing that the session speaker has been in law enforcement 19 years, and she was transitioned into the cyber team for Interpol, and learning on the job about cybersecurity and cyber crimes. She ended up understanding that most cyber crimes are from individuals that are on the spectrum, autism spectrum. And it was very intriguing to understand the process behind it and how they came to that conclusion. And some of the past examples of that were very interesting. So she really highlighted towards the end in her closing that it'd be worth it for organizations to develop a program to hire autistic individuals into their organization, because they can be productive individuals if you harness them properly. So that was very interesting. And I will tell you, I looked up the presentation. I can't find it online. So not all presentations are loaded there.
Well, some of them take a little bit of time, because I've noticed also there was one that I wasn't able to attend because there was a conflict, and I'm waiting for it to be loaded. One of the people said it could take up to 3 weeks. So. Oh, okay. So there's still hope for it. One of the things that I think you had mentioned that in that session that you were just talking about, Christine, that there was a high percentage of hackers that played Fortnite, that online game. Was that the session that did that?
She wasn't kind of knocking the gaming industry, but prior to Fortnite, apparently it was World of Warcraft. But she talked about it's kind of the introduction into cyberspace. So people in the spectrum are drawn to cyberspace because there's virtually you can kind of do anything on it, and they can get very, very addicted to it just because of their learning behaviors, and it allows them some anonymity. There's no emotion in it. So it's their element, right? So, people on the spectrum that tend to play those games have interactions with other people on the other end, and, it could start out as something as simple as kind of just hacking someone's profile and character and kind of stealing it from them. because there's no consequences behind it. Autistic people or people on the spectrum might understand that there's right and wrong, but what they don't understand is the consequences behind their actions. So it's okay just to take a profile and then, somebody talking to them while they're on the game saying, well, I stole this iPad, or I bought this iPad from someone's credit card that I got online, and, nothing's happened to me. They just, police aren't going to chase after one guy who stole someone's credit card for the one iPad, right? So it's like an introduction to these people because there is no consequence. I'm using quotation marks. It's easy to get absorbed into for individuals that are on the spectrum.
Gotcha.
And it kind of starts out that way. In fact, I was just told this morning that there was an article about a 14-year-old kid that was playing Fortnite, and apparently he was bringing in a lot of money from it. He was able to pay his mother's mortgage payment with it. And the
Wow.
mother didn't she didn't realize there was consequences behind it at the end, right? He ended up hacking some government entity because he had the smarts and willing and know-how to do that, again, quotation marks, without consequence. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting concept, and it was a very good session for those that attended.
Well, that's cool. It sounds like definitely one that I'm going to look forward to when they have it online. Hopefully they have it online. One of the other ones that I think that was really good was the roundtable discussions. And I don't know what they were called, what the names of them were, but I went to one, and it was about IoT. And I think you guys you both attended that one. And other than the speaker, the moderator, who showed up late on the phone, told us to do introductions so that he could keep on talking on the phone. Other than that, I think that was kind of like a faux pas, definitely, as a speaker. You never want to do anything like that. But I think the session was good, and every one of those sessions is going to be different. It depends who shows up and who participates, because it's really audience participation, right? So I felt like I did more talking than a lot of the other guys. There, a lot of people were talking about what are the problems with IoT, what are some of the potential solutions, and there was a couple guys that had some really good insight into what they've done in their organizations, and a lot of people threw out solutions that weren't super helpful, and others had some that did seem like it would be helpful. So those are a mixed bag. So it depends upon who the audience is, and hopefully you get a facilitator that is not on the phone. I know you guys
Right.
you two were kind of upset about that.
Yeah, I agree. Doing as much training as we all have in our careers, I don't think I'd ever walk into a room with 20 people waiting for you to moderate on the phone, on your computer, not prepared, have everybody start introductions without you. Oh, and on top of it, hey, does somebody mind taking notes? So
I took notes.
I was automatically turned off. And I went to another peer-to-peer meeting, and it was one of the few sessions that RSA hosted around healthcare. And the moderator was early, she was engaging, she had questions prepared on the board for us, and it was a delightful conversation. Kind of getting back to where there's a missed opportunity, healthcare. That was one of the few sessions that were healthcare related. And in that particular peer-to-peer session, there was only 2 healthcare organizations, myself and one other, out of 20 people. The rest were, device manufacturers or consultants. So I was a little surprised. again, big missed opportunity that we could probably look into.
Oh, cool. There was other types of things called learning labs, which I didn't go to one this year. I've gone to one in the past. Actually, I felt that the learning labs were really good, the ones I did in the past. Probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, I went to one. And the learning lab that I went to was we all got little cards that told us who we were in this big play that was going on. And the big play was a data breach happened, and information was disclosed, and you are the FBI agent, right? Or you are the CEO of the company, you're the CISO of the company, and then it would give you little facts, and then we'd have to sit down at our tables, and certain people in our tables, and I think we were like the FBI. It's a made-up country, but we were like the FBI, and we were figuring out, who are we going to interview? And then we actually had to get up across the room, go and interview somebody. And then they had a card that said what they were allowed to say and what they weren't supposed to say. And then they would stop halfway through it and then go over, okay, what's happened so far? All right, this is breach, plus 4 hours. What's happened so far? And then, the news media was doing interviews, and it was really interesting. And you went to one this year, Rob. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I went to the Cloud Capture the Flag, Identifying and Resolving Attacks in Azure. And basically what this was is I don't know if any of you have ever participated in the Capture the Flag, but basically there's a digital component that is on the network somewhere, and your job as a analyst is to go find and capture said flag, right? So you can use the tools at hand as a generalized statement to find said flag. This particular lab focused in on kind of funneling all of your current event IDs and alerts and identifications from multiple systems into Microsoft's new solution that they just released 2 weeks ago now. They just released it February 28th. It's called Sentinel. And it is for lack of a better description, it is a SIEM, a cloud-based SIEM up in Azure, very similar to functionality you get with Splunk. So you get a dashboard. It gives you all of your alerts that are there. But the other thing that it does is it ties several alerts together into a chronological series of an indication of some kind. So the goal here is, with this Capture the Flag scenario, was you started the investigation process by looking at by going into Sentinel first off, and then configuring Sentinel to pull in logs from all of your Azure-based resources. And then based off of pulling that information into logs, Sentinel would start to correlate what events had happened on what systems, and then give you a kind of like an incident report. And that would help you prioritize the incident report, and from there you can drill into the incident and actually see what happened. So as an example, in this particular one, the first event was they spun off several SVC hosts and managed to compromise the system based off of vulnerability associated. From there, they managed to pull down a copy of a utility called Mimekatz, which is a password dumper program based for Windows. So what that would do then is extract basically all the username, the user SIDs, and the hash values of passwords into a file so that they can be exfiltrated out. Again, it was done through the vulnerability associated through the SVC host that was launched. And then the third item in that incident was a brute force attack against a particular account. So these were all items in one particular indicator of a compromise, or a potential indicator of a compromise. And then from there, you would follow that lead to the actual system, and then you drill through the system itself, find the files that had been left behind as their signature, using Sentinel as and its hashing capabilities to find the files. And then from there, it would, again, you would go through and dump out, and you would find out what the end result was, and that end result was a foreign entity had compromised the machine, gotten the password, logged in as that account, who didn't have any other privileges other than to log on to a regular account, and then went through the process of like certificate manipulation, and then managed to change the domain around. So it was really cool. The whole goal was to show you the capabilities of Sentinel, kind of an all-in-one, again, kind of a dashboard view, so you can quickly respond to these incidents. Because it would probably take, I don't know, depending on your current environment and your current SIEM, if you have a SOC or not, it could take anywhere up to a few hours to find and correlate these particular incidents. Whereas putting it in the Sentinel, I mean, you found it like within literally 5 minutes.
Oh, cool.
And I say found it as in not necessarily found the flag, right? But what Sentinel did is it started to analyze all the data that was coming in and then say, these are all the indicators, and dumps them all together in a single like attack component. That's what Sentinel did. It was really cool.
That's cool.
And
so you would suggest. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I would highly suggest doing some of these learning labs. Find one that may be outside your wheelhouse, right? Like if you're not an Azure guru, for example. I went here because I'm getting into Azure myself, and I really like security. So I said, hey, what better way to jump in on this? And it really showcases some of the very unique components that are found within Azure that a lot of people don't or may not be aware of. Like if you talk to them in general about Azure, they may say, oh, that's where we have VMs running, or that's where we have a database running, or what have you, not realizing that, you can funnel all of your servers and workstations, event logs and event IDs up into Sentinel, and it will monitor all this for you, and then, set notifications up and all of those things. So it was really neat. That's number one. And number two, you must read the description of the learning lab, because it will tell you to bring your laptop. So we had a few people who basically showed up to this session as a learning lab, even though the title says you're identifying and resolving attacks in Azure, who just showed up with their cell phone.
Oh,
you can do it with your cell phone, but it's really difficult because it's not, you can log into a web page, you can log into the Azure portal, right? But it's not the footprint of the screen that you get. It just makes it really difficult to kind of keep track of what's going on.
So your takeaway is make sure you read the session description so you know what you need to be prepared for.
Yes, because part of it too was like the assumption is you're there to learn how to identify attacks. So the assumption is, I shouldn't say assumption, the understanding is when you show up, you would have knowledge on how to admin an Azure instance, right, or an Azure subscription. So if you go there without even knowing how to log into the portal, you're going to have some problems navigating and working within the Azure environment.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know for those that want to do things next year. So if you're planning on doing labs, take a look at them before you go. On the side of the keynotes, I didn't see the keynotes because I was doing other things that morning, but I watched the cryptographers panel this morning, and it was really interesting because one of the guys that's there every year, has been there since the beginning, couldn't get his visa to come into the United States to be a speaker. He's been waiting for like months and months and months to get it, and he just heard nothing. So he's not sure why that was a problem. And always on there, Duffy's on there, from the Duffy Hellman cryptography. He's always on the panel, and he's always interesting, to say the least. He always has some very opinionated opinions, some of them very political, but and they all had a little bit of an issue. Australia just passed a law that basically says if you're a programmer, you have to put a backdoor in so we can get into it, and that's kind of like turning a lot of vendors and software developers off, because that makes it, so they're saying don't make it secure as you possibly can make it, to help law enforcement, be able to get in there. And so that's a hotly debated thing. And so it was interesting in that one, at least to hear some of the different points of view on it. And I think that one is still something that we're going to have an issue, because Apple had the same problem where the FBI said, hey, we want you to break into it. And they're like, we can't break into it. What do you want? But so that's always going to be an issue so it's interesting to find out that they were talking about it. The other one was on the final day, Tina Fey was the guest speaker. And I thought what was interesting about it is I don't know why she was there. I know, I forget who the name of the gentleman was that does a lot of he works for RSA and he does a lot of the keynote introductions and stuff like that. He was trying to ask her questions and all this, but it wasn't really getting anywhere, and I didn't feel like there was really a connection between cybersecurity and what Tina Fey does. I do think he did talk a little bit about teamwork. I guess that might be a takeaway. And Tina had said, what makes great comedy or writing? And she said, well, having different people with different points of view. So those two takeaways, I guess, are worth it. I guess it's worth it to be close and see Tina Fey, in real life. But other than that, I don't know that it was super helpful. I think in the past they've had some other people that were a little bit better. And not that I don't like Tina Fey, because I think she's one of the funniest people out there. Just not sure how she really connected with the audience. She was funny, though. She did have a couple one-liners that were funny and good. But that was about it. I don't know. You have any thoughts on that, Rob?
Hugh Thompson, the RSA program chair for the conference, is the gentleman who was the narrator, I guess. And my opinion is he's not very funny, and rather has a dry delivery. And Tina was, he asked a question, and she basically answered that question in the first 5 minutes, and then he went on to ask basically the same question in a just different verbiage to it. And she's like, well, I kind of already answered that, but this is what you do. Great. Hey, let me ask you about, how you do this. And she's like, I just answered that a minute ago, but okay, I'll put a different spin on it. It's like this. And at least that was what I got out of the 20 minutes or so that we were there listening to the session, just because, again, I think her by herself, she would have been fine. She just came out with a keynote speech on here's the things, right? That kind of is a parallel. But to kind of go back and forth, because, he had cue cards with questions on them, and he didn't even use any of the cue cards with questions. He just basically asked the same one over and over again.
Yeah, Rob, I agree with you. It was a little awkward. It had a little awkward vibe to it. And I did notice he was asking the same question, just burst differently.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you can't win them all, I guess. But hopefully they will change that in the future. And I would have preferred, if Tina Fey came out and said, hey, this is what made me great as a comedian, hard work, teamwork, all this same type of stuff that, you would say to any conference. Yep. I think that would have been more interesting. And her delivery would probably have been more funny. You know what I mean? So I think it could have been good, but the format was just not appropriate, I don't think. So what everybody wants to know about after hours. So we told you about all the swag, and you need to bring extra luggage because you're going to take extra stuff home. But what about the after parties? I'd have to say there's a couple different things. Vendors have parties, and you usually have to hook up with the vendor either at their booth or before the event. So if they already know you, because you already get emails from Cisco, you may find out about it. Once you register for RSA, if you allow vendors to have your information, then they may start sending you emails. Usually you can find out, and so there's certain vendors like Microsoft, Cisco, Qualys, all the big ones, right? They're always there. They always have parties, and you can usually, send an email out to your rep or somebody at the place, and you can probably get into the parties. Or at the booth, you might be able to get it. Just kind of depends, because all of them are different, and so they're all hit or miss for the vendor parties. Or you go out on your own. RSA had an after-hours thing this year where instead of having one big party on Thursday like a lot of other conferences do, they had pick your own party, which I thought was kind of a good idea from a point of view of having a conference, because then you could pick what you want. So they had one night that was game night. They had arcade games and that kind of stuff. I didn't go to that one. So we all went to the wine and whiskey one. I was actually disappointed once I got there because they only had one whiskey. Well, they had one whiskey distillery with 3 of their whiskeys, and that was it. That was all that was there to taste. And then wine. So if you're going to do wine or whiskey, you're not going to do both, right? So you're going to want to do whiskey. Then you only had 3 things to try, and it was all from the same vendor. So they didn't have multiple vendors. I was really kind of, if you're going to have wine tasting or whiskey tasting, you're expecting more than just 3. You know what I mean? I don't know about you guys, but that's how I felt for that. I was like,
I agree.
They did have like cheese and crackers and stuff that you would have with wine and that kind of thing there. And then they had some sliders and stuff like that. They had that, and that was just a wine and whiskey night. You had to pick one of these nights, and you reserved the seat for it, and then you could not reserve a seat for one of the other nights. So you were only allowed to go to one, but you got to pick one. So I liked the idea of picking it. I just thought it fell a little flat. They had on Monday night, I think, the welcome reception. That was in the expo hall, and they have food and drink there that you could just go and get wine and drinks and food. And they had little chicken on skewers that I thought was really good. I think I had like 10 of them. But vendor parties, we went to a private one from Darktrace. It was invitation only, so that was a really interesting one. I got to talk to the CEO of Darktrace, and their chief technology officer sat at the table right next to us, and they had other, prospective clients were there. And I thought it was really good. There was a lot of good conversations with the folks there at the table. And I think, Rob, you ran into somebody that you were stationed in the same place a long time ago, the guy that sat right next to you or whatever?
Yeah, the guy sat right next to me. He was a clerk in the Army, and he was basically posted to Germany the same time I was. Same years. We were just at different posts or different bases within Germany, but it was kind of funny. And
yeah.
the irony was we had the same colored shirt on.
Yeah. You got the memo. I didn't get the memo that day, I guess. The other one that I thought was really good, Cisco had a party, and they had like a band at the beginning, and the picture here on the slide is they had dueling piano thing going on that I thought was really good. I really enjoyed it. The venue was a little bit small for as many people as they had. They were metering people in, so as people left, more people could come in. So they had like a standby outside. We already had tickets. We had already signed up. We already had our wristbands because we had to pick those up at the booth. We were able to get in no problem once we got there. I think people that came and tried to sign up at the conference got like standby tickets, and they had to wait until some of us left to get in there because it was crowded like crazy. And if you like to eat and drink, these places are the places you want to go because they usually have a food, although the line to get to the food was a little long at the Cisco one. they had like tacos and stuff like that. But and the drinks, it would take about 5 minutes to get up there and wait in line to get up to get a drink. But I mean, all the after parties are usually pretty good. So those are the two that we went to. And then if you're in the city and you're on your own, there's all kinds of things you can do. We rode a cable car one day. So there's if you're in San Francisco and you want to go there, we went to dinner at the Marines Memorial. If you're in town and you want to have a nice dinner, the Marines Memorial is a place that I'd recommend. There's a place down the street from the convention center on Howard Street. It's called Thirsty Bear. We didn't go this time. I've gone in the past. They have tapas, little Spanish foods, and it's any kind of beer you want. So it's a really nice, low-key, small, bite-sized food type place, and it's usually crowded all the time. So, and I forgot where else we ate, at a diner someplace. So we ate all over the place in the city. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do when you're here on your own. There is no lack of stuff to do. So if you're ever in the city or you're on the RSA conference or any other conference, there's plenty of stuff to do at nighttime as far as food goes. I'm sure there's other entertainment as well. And Moscone Center has a movie theater there, so you could always go to the movie theater before you go back to your hotel if you wanted to watch something. Anything else that either of you have to add on at the conference? I guess that's a no.
Pace yourself. This is a big thing. So give yourself, like, on any given day, you should go to, pick multiple, again, sign up ahead of time, get the schedule, look at the schedule, look at the topics you want to go to, reserve a seat at the one you really, really want to go to, have a couple as backups just in case something happens, right? A speaker may not show or they may cancel it for whatever reason, that you have something else already thought about to go in that time. And give yourself time to go through the expo.
Yeah,
so,
I think the expo. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I agree with Rob. You kind of have to pace yourself. There's just so much to do, and I understand what RSA is doing, right? They want to get out information, they want to educate, they want to share learning opportunities, and it is a lot to take in. And as Rob said, if you plan it out in advance, kind of understand what you're going into, what kind of track you're looking for when you go into it, I think it's going to help immensely. I know it did for me, especially being a first-timer. Be cautious of the sessions that are really, really busy and interested, because if you are looking to get in after the registration for that particular class is closed, they might not have availability for a seat just because they're so popular. And I think that's what we came up against a couple of times. Thank God I got in just a few people after in the waiting, kind of the standby. But there were some people that were turned away because there was just not enough seats. So that's a possibility, and I just wanted people to kind of keep that in mind. So if there's something you really, really want to see, register as soon as possible so you make sure you get in that class.
Yeah, I agree. I think planning in advance really helps out to see, because the first time I went, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't plan for anything. I was looking through the book during the session to figure out what I was going to do next. And that's the worst time because you're not really paying attention to what's going on. So if you plan it out in advance, at least, and the app gives you the ability either online or in the app to either favorite or reserve a seat. So you can favorite things so that if like Rob says, something falls through, you can get to another session. And also part of looking at that is seeing where they've scheduled the talk to happen. So if you have one back-to-back and it's in the South Hall and you're trying to pick between two other sessions and you're flip a coin on which one you want to go to, and one's in the west and one's in the south. If you're already in the south, you might want to just go to the one that's in the south, so you can do a bio break, grab some water, maybe some coffee, and then get into the next session. Because if you have to walk from south to west, you probably you could end up not having enough time to get from one to the other. So good thing to remember. And I think two other things, and Christine, you didn't go to it, but I think it's a good thing. They have a session for first timers. So if you're a first timer next year, they usually have a session, it's Monday or Tuesday, and it kind of basically gives you some advice, some of the stuff that we talk about here, just how to get around and get your bearings. The other thing that I'd like to mention, because Rob teaches and I teach as well, is on Thursday night they have college night. If you're a college student or Thursday, you can sign up and get basically the full conference pass for Thursday. So on Thursday you can go and attend sessions and go to the expo and all of that kind of stuff as a student for free on Thursday. Now, they may not have the session you want on Thursday. If you're a student, you can also, or faculty, you can get a discounted rate. They also have discounted rates if you buy it back in November. So, put a tickler in your file for October. You go to the website, you can register, tell them that you're interested in 2020. They'll start sending you emails when registration is about to happen. If you get it early on, even if you have to pay full price because you're not a student or whatever, you can still get a cheaper price. If you're a student, you can get the cheaper price. If you're a student, they have a special session for you in the morning telling you about careers in cybersecurity, and then they have some suggested things that you could go to. They also have cheaper registration. You can sign for the whole conference or you get the 1 day free. The whole conference is a discount or the 1 day is free. So if you're a student, take a look at that. It's well worth it. And then they also have what they call expo passes. Expo passes means you can get to the expo hall and not go to any of the sessions. I have a lot of friends that actually just get the expo hall and they just go through that. You're amazed at how much you can actually learn by going to it. I think one of my first conferences I went to, I didn't know anything about, I don't know what it was. And I went to and I talked to almost every vendor about it. And by the time I left there, I felt like I was an expert. Not that I was, I just felt like it. But because you're going to hear so many times, well, and a couple of years ago, we were looking at upgrading our firewall to a new firewall. So I figured, well, I'm going to go talk to all the firewall vendors and I want their spiel. What do they have? What makes them better than everybody else? And I specifically asked them that question. What makes you better than that firewall over there? Well, this is what we do. And then I learned a lot about the new technologies that they had in some of the new application layer firewalls. So it was really interesting that stuff I didn't know, I actually learned. So you can learn a lot on the expo hall, and the expo, you can usually get those for free. You can pay for them, $100 or whatever it is to get it, so you go every day that the expo is open. Or vendors like Cisco have a certain number of them that they give out for free. So if you know a vendor that has a booth on the thing, check them out. You just go to Google and or Bing and type in vendor pass or expo pass for RSA 2020. And I'm sure the vendors, when time comes around, they're going to actually have the passes available. You can sign up for those and get it for free. So anyways, I think that's all we have, unless you guys have anything else. I think we're done with all of that. So remember to go ahead and like our channel, rate this session. Let us know if there's anything that we can talk about next time. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post them on here and we can get back to you. You can follow our blog that Rob and I keep at learnsecurity.org and see what we're talking about or what's coming up. Thanks a lot for attending.
Have a good day, everybody.